Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you as always for making time.
Good afternoon.
Well, let's start with Wall Street, where the three main indices were up quite a bit on Monday. Tech shares in particular leading the Nasdaq to an all-time high during the session. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, as you said, U.S. market showed quite strong movement yesterday. If you look at Dow Jones, it was up 0.9%. S&P was up 0.7%. And also Nasdaq jumped by 1.5% to new record high of breaking above 10,900 territories. Also, the small caps were quite strong as well. One of the big underperformer year to date has performed quite well by rising 1.8%. Clearly, there are news in regards to the COVID-19 treatment. Eli Lilly said that it was beginning a phase 3 trial of this experimental drug to see whether it can prevent the virus spread in residents and staffs in U.S. nursing homes. And these news are obviously clearly putting some benefits to the overall market sentiment. Also, a lot of these numbers are coming out from the Eurozone, U.S., and globally in regards to the PMI data. All is showing better than expected number that economy is in right track to recovery. Due to these kind of positive news, the overall markets were quite strong, and that fitted to the Asian market being quite strong as well. If you look at the Korean market as well as the other Asian market did quite strongly. However, though, Chinese market have shown somewhat of a correction.
Well, you mentioned data from the U.S. Manufacturing activity last month rising to a 1.5-year high. That would seem to have contributed to today's stock market gains in Korea. What happened on the Kospi and the Kosdaq?
Right. I think that clearly there's news that the global economy is recovering. A lot of people were worried that because of the pandemic, the new patients, the trend was quite sharp rise that we saw in the past several weeks, and that is breaking the record high numbers. Everybody were worried about the economy not recovering. However, though, these numbers are showing that the recovery is in right track for recovery. If you look at the overall savings ratio of the U.S., it is going down to 19%, but nevertheless, we have seen quite a significant consumption growth, the retail sales growth numbers. All that means is that it is positive news for the Korean economy because Korea depends highly on the exports, and we were worried about the export numbers being continue to be very weak, year-on-year declining numbers. But we are now hoping that these numbers should turn positive sometime within this year. And if that's the case, Korea should be remaining at one of the better performing economy relative to other countries. Because of that, we saw Kospi rising by 1.3%. Kosdaq was risen again by 0.94%. That's quite a strong movement as Kosdaq has been continued to be moving up higher in the last several days, despite the Kospi being quite weak in the last several days until today. All in all, these economic news as well as the additional liquidity conditions that we see the money flowing into the equity market, the customer deposits continue to show rising trend, reaching 47.8 trillion won. We think that these should affect positively in the medium to longer term for Korean equity market.
Well, now you mentioned consumers, and consumer prices last month in Korea were up 0.3% compared to a year earlier. That's an increase at least, unlike the past few months, but it's still very much on the low side. What do you make of that figure?
Yes, it's good news that it is showing a relatively better than expected, and inflation is coming back. We like inflation rather than deflation, and the South Korea's inflation edged up for the first time in 3 months in July amid the signs of recovery in the consumer sentiment. But still, as you said, it remains below central bank's 2% annual target. I don't think that there are any economies that are showing that kind of inflation numbers. Clearly, the economies are affected negatively by the COVID-19 event. However, though, the number seems to be gradually recovering. The core inflation numbers are gaining by about 0.7% YOY, which is a good trend. All in all, we think the consumer price should recover to above 1% as the month goes by. The inflation coming back is definitely positive news for the economy, and that the overall economy recovery should be in a right track where Korea can rise by about 2% YOY in a longer term basis. However, though, the interest rate environment, if inflation comes back, it might be showing a rising trend. If the inflation numbers come in at bigger than expected, then the interest rate rise should be rapid. If that's the case, then bond investment will be unattractive. And also higher interest rate means that lower sentiment for the equity market as well. So we are in a mixture where the inflation numbers are in a rising trend, but not to the extent where it damages the equity market. We think that this kind of so-called the right number of the inflation environment is definitely positive news for the equity market in general.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, thank you for sharing your insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.